This video contains homosexual content. You have been warned. Open Door, a John Locke fanfiction by Nightmare Kisser, Part 2. Well, here goes again. He had gone up to John's room in the first place because John hadn't been in the kitchen, living room or bathroom when Sherlock came home. He hadn't bothered to call out because he, frankly, was too lazy to, and figured that if John wasn't home, it would be useless, and if he were, he was easy enough to find if Sherlock simply looked. But what he found, he hadn't been expecting at all. He heard the noises first, the soft panting, the passing gasps and moans and low whines, and he knew what they were as he approached. He knew. God damn it all. But he kept going. His feet led him to the door as soon as he was halfway down the hall and saw it was cracked open, and he couldn't help it. He had to see for himself. The sounds were enough to trigger a hunger Sherlock didn't realize he was capable of feeling for another person, and that was all it took. That electricity was all he needed to dissolve his resolve, and now he's buried himself in an odd sort of mess because Sherlock is picturing it in the emptiness of his room now, and his prick twitches with interest again as the vivid images, Sherlock damns his own memories sometimes for being so crisp with detail, flood back to him out of chronological order, even filling in imaginary gaps as to how John got into that position, all in clips of visuals and sounds. He presses a hand to his groin and wills himself not to become aroused again as he lies down for bed. He might as well sleep. He's about due for a few hours of it, given the past 19 hours he's been awake. Sherlock curls onto his side and tries to keep his mind closed, as that bloody door should have been, as he attempts sleep. Sherlock? John prods as he knocks on Sherlock's bedroom door the following evening. You have been in there since yesterday afternoon. Do you want something to eat? Do you feel unwell? Is that why you snapped at me? How is your burn anyway? Not blistering, is it? The questions are not all said at once. There are periods of silence between each one, apart from the unwell and snap comments said in a set. Between each question, John allows a full minute before asking another. He's concerned. It's only natural. Sherlock might be silent for a few days at a time, but never cooped up in his room unless it's to sleep after a particularly draining case. This is not one of those times, so John is right in thinking Sherlock might be ill. I'm fine, John, Sherlock answers. He forces himself off his bed and enters the bedroom through his adjoining door. Don't worry about me. If I want food, I will make it myself later. Oh, alright. Whatever you say. Just, if you're sick, tell me, okay? I know how you get. Too damn prideful to admit you've weakened at all. So if you are, say so, you hear? I can get you some medicine since I know you don't have any in there. Sherlock almost smiles as he flushes the toilet and washes his hands. I'll be sure to ask if that's ever the case, but I'm not sick. I sound fine, can't you tell? There's a pause. Not congested or raspy, you're right, but you sound, well, more emotionless than usual. Are you sure you're okay? I'm alright really. Sherlock barks through the bathroom door, returning to his room. Leave me be, John. Christ, fine, John says in defeat. He laughs a little as he walks away. I swear, you have worse mood swings than my girlfriends in the periods. That's disgustingly vulgar, John. Sherlock returns through the door, and he hears John stop and shuffle back. Well, I wouldn't have to be vulgar if you got your sense of humour back. His voice is directly on the other side of the wood, and nearly right in front of Sherlock's lips. He feels his breath hitch in his throat and heat collect in his lower abdomen at the sound of John's voice, and the knowledge of John's mouth being right there. All Sherlock knowing all he has to do is open the door and bring their mouths together. Sherlock stumbles back a few steps. This is why seeing John is still too fresh, too soon. And why was he being foolishly reckless by tossing privacy to the wind and watching John yesterday? It will take at least a week for the memory to fade enough for Sherlock to so much as look at John, without picturing him essentially naked and kneeling before a mirror with his hips thrusting shallowly into his stroking hand, his other hand buried inside himself, and his head tilted back as he climbed towards orgasm. Sherlock holds his thought before they have further effect on his body. He remains flaccid, thankfully, but that doesn't stop the pitch in his stomach. He feels icy hot suddenly and has to strip himself off his shirt as he sits down on the edge of his bed. He's in so deep, he wonders why one incident of being a peeping Tom has led to this so rapidly. Logically, Sherlock knows it means he must have been harbouring something for John that only needed this incident to set it into full motion. But what? What could he have possibly felt? Or rather, still feel, but stronger, to make his lust flare up this hotly? Sherlock swallows hard. Well, love can do that. People in love desire sex from the ones they love romantically, and Sherlock has always known about his fondness for John. John Watson is, after all, the sole person on this planet Sherlock can stand to be with at all hours and not tire of, even through their arguments. And he does happen to be the only person Sherlock doesn't find repelling in intellect or appearance. And John is charming and lovable in his own ways, according to everyone Sherlock has met. And Sherlock has always admired John's bravery and ability to understand complex things if given the short time or brief explanation. And he is a rather wonderful man in general, if Sherlock considers all the aspects of John and... Shit, he is in love with John then, by all the logic according to the knowledge Sherlock has of human behaviour regarding romantic attachment. Since when though? Since when has Sherlock felt this way? Thinking on it, it's been building for quite some time. He has thought most of these things since the moment he met John in the chemistry lab at St. Bart's, and getting to know John for the past couple of years as he has, those ideas have only doubled and tripled into, well, what only can be love, Sherlock supposes. Love that has awakened a lust the second Sherlock caught John wanking. He reiterates, shit. The most sensible thing to do is ignore the revelation and avoid being so obviously one-track minded, and it works for another day until Sherlock is starving and requires sustenance for his body. He emerges when he is sure John is out and makes himself toast and devours an apple and 2 cups of tea to fill in the cracks. By then, John sends a text. On my way home, anything you want me to pick up, and you better be out of your room this time or I will have to drag you out. Sherlock makes a face, but clears it and replies, I'll require nothing, Sherlock Holmes. He adds sassily, and I am out of my room, Sherlock Holmes. Good. I was about to call in reinforcements. Sherlock smiles at that. John's concern makes him feel nice, and if he ever wanted further proof of his feelings, that pleasantness alone is enough. Sighing, Sherlock remains in the living room, bored out of his mind, but too lethargic to do anything about it. John comes home 15 minutes later. He has a shopping bag in his hand and his keys in the other. He sets both on the partially cleared kitchen table and goes about putting the shopping away. He voices, feeling any better? I told you I wasn't ill, Sherlock remarks. Sickness comes in all forms, you know. Depression is one kind, the flu is another, for example. John says fluently as he puts some new tea up on the cabinet. So maybe you weren't sick physically, but you must have been emotionally, or else you would have come out. Touché, Doctor, Sherlock bristles. You were correct then. I wasn't feeling myself in the emotional regard. I was thrown off balance by a revelation. It's nothing of consequence to you, however, because it won't make it of consequence to John, because he doesn't intend to confess a single thing to the ex-army doctor. John holds no interest in men. He would have not needed to masturbate at all, in fact, if he had a girlfriend currently. But as it happens, he doesn't. But it still stands that he has only ever had girlfriends, and therefore wouldn't wish to participate in anything Sherlock might have to offer, which makes any confession awkward and moot. What happened? Can I know? John says out of curiosity, smiling a little as he unloads the final item and makes his way with his keys to his bedroom to put away his wallet, jacket, and shoes. It's nothing, Sherlock calls after his flatmate. He shifts to cross his legs at the knee. John's in his room and he's taken a moment in there, longer than necessary to drop off a couple of items. His room is now associated with that memory and is still haunting Sherlock. Hard as he tries to will it away, it was so So dumb to sit there and watch. Why didn't he engage his impeccable willpower and tear himself away? Why? Love or not, he shouldn't have done it. He really shouldn't have. He wouldn't be in this mess now, if he had only... Was it about one of your unsolved cases? If so, that's something for the blog surely. John says as he returns, changed out of a jumper, wearing a thin cotton tee instead. He also removed his socks. His arms are showing more. His bare feet, like before, like... Stop. Sherlock, are you okay? You're glaring at me. The glare was meant for Sherlock's one-track mind, as it were. He can't seem to prevent it from slipping. It would take a week, he calculated. It's only been a couple of days. He sighs through his nose after a deep inhale through it. He brings his hands together and presses them into the cleft of his chin. I apologize. It's nothing for your blog, John. It's a personal revelation. Something I haven't bothered to analyze about myself. It's nothing you need to worry about. Except that it is. If John knew, if he ever discovered, well, Sherlock fears John would move out, and he couldn't stand that. He feels nauseous at the very thought of losing John over something as pathetic and petty, and pedestrian as unrequited love and unadulterated lust. So, with a clearing of his throat, Sherlock changes the subject to something bony killing, a new experiment he wishes to conduct regarding human kidneys, and if John would mind so much if he throws a few. John sighs, just keep them in the bottom shelf of the freezer, away from the edible meat on top, alright? Heaven forbid someone mistake it for a cutlet, and fry it up and eat it. Sherlock smiles minutely. Heaven forbid one of us cross into cannibalism, yes. What a waste of valuable sanity that would be, not to mention how it would ruin my experiment. Clearly your experiment is the most important thing there, John says with a roll of his eyes, but he's smiling. Sherlock smirks briefly. Of course it is.